A lion loose. Mr. T.J. Osborne of Old Market Street, Neath, was the subject of a strange adventure at the Bridge Hotel, Landringdod Wells, on Friday afternoon, about 3:30. Mr. Osborne was preparing to leave for home by the afternoon train on that day when a full-grown African lion dashed in through the open window. Mr. Osborne seized a chair to defend himself. At this instant, the lion's keeper and a staff of men appeared on the scene. The keeper warned Mr. Osborne not to stir. With as little delay as possible, the keeper and his assistants made their way to the room with the necessary appliances for recapturing the brute. With some difficulty, they succeeded in throwing a sack over the lion's head, after which he was firmly secured with ropes. It was found that the lion had made its escape from Wanwell's menagerie, which was located on a plot of ground near the Bridge Hotel. Burroughs Worcester Journal, July 6, 1889. Laughed himself to death. Wesley Parsons, an aged and well-known farmer, died at Laurel Industries under peculiar circumstances. While joking with friends, he was seized with a spell of laughing, being unable to stop. He laughed for nearly an hour when he began hiccuping, and 2 hours later he died from exhaustion. The Star, Guernsey, December 14th, 1893. A martyr to science. The Sicilian tyrant, Phalaris, was roasted on the instrument he had prepared for the roasting of others, and by a singular fatality, a French engineer has just fallen the first victim to his own murderous invention. The poor fellow lived in the Faubourg Saint-Antoine, and had for a considerable time been engaged in fabricating an engine of war which should sweep away whole columns and provide his countrymen with an incomparable weapon of vengeance. He had spent all he possessed on his deadly invention, and had become so absorbed in it and so furious at his repeated failures that his friends were on the point of putting him under constraint. On Saturday last they left him making a final experiment. In a few hours, however, an awful explosion was heard. All the windows in the neighbourhood were broken, and volumes of smoke were pouring from the apartment. The police at once forced an entrance, and found the implement of war burst into pieces, and the inventor himself lying in fragments about the room. He had placed upon his table 100 leaden soldiers, such as children play with, dressed in the Prussian uniform, loaded his machine to the muzzle with his own composition of missiles, and fired it off. His remains were collected limb by limb and conveyed to the morgue. The Hampshire Telegraph and Sussex Chronicle, September 28th, 1872. Selling a wife by auction. It is only a few months since that a paragraph went the round of the papers relating how a certain stonemason at Rawtenstall in Rossendale sold his wife to another man for the sum of £10. But it would seem from certain proceedings which took place last week at Stacksteads, a Rossendale village, that the money value of wives has sadly declined since that event. A navvy living at Tunstall Mill, Stacksteads, determined to get rid of the partner of his joys and sorrows by offering her for sale by auction, the highest bidder as usual to take the lot. On Tuesday last the sale took place at the husband's house, but, despite Solomon's testimony as to a woman being more precious than rubies, and notwithstanding that the spectators were numerous, the highest offer was only 4 shillings, at which low figure the wife was eventually knocked down to another navvy, who, by the by, lived next door. The seller wanted to throw in 3 children, but the buyer objected, and the bairns were left on hand. The wife, however, went joyfully to the home of her new owner, and seemed to be quite as glad to get away from her late liege lord as he was to part with her. The occurrence has caused quite a stir in the locality, and has been commented upon by the local press. The Sheffield and Rotherham Independent, July 29th, 1879. A drunken child. On Wednesday morning, a child about 7 years old was admitted into the East Dispensary, Liverpool, insensible. The boy was the son of an organ grinder and had gone into a public house for the purpose of making a collection when several drinks of whisky were given to him by the customers and he fell to the ground. He was attended to by the doctor, remained in the institution a considerable time, and afterwards was taken home by his parents, still suffering from the effects of the spirits he had consumed. The Citizen, Gloucester, December 18th, 1890. Singular cause of death. A young lady in Reading has just died from sheer fright, produced through a foolish fancy. Having had her photograph taken, she showed a copy to her mother, who discovered the form of a skull on the pictures. Another skull having been figured out, the young lady grew pale, took to her bed and died. The Edinburgh Evening News, September 7th, 1876. A strong man as a lodger. On Wednesday, in the Westminster County Court, the case of Brackenbury v Sandow came before Judge Bailey. The plaintiff claimed £4, 12 shillings and sixpence for damage done to the ceiling and furniture at 6 Rupert Street, London, by the defendant, known as the Strong Man. Mr. T. Mann, in opening the case, said the defendant, who did not appear, rented some rooms at the plaintiff's house, and after a little time he commenced to practice some feats of strength in the rooms with dumbbells and heavy weights, with the results that the ceiling of the room below came down. He stopped practicing with the weights, but commenced to use a pistol, with the result that he damaged the wallpaper and fired through a picture frame. He also dropped one of the dumbbells on a cabinet, knocking the corner off. Plaintiff gave evidence in support of this statement, and in answer to his Honour as to what objection he had to dumbbells, the plaintiff said, "One of them weighed 320 pounds, sir." His Honour gave judgment for the plaintiff for the amount claimed, with costs. The Huddersfield Daily Chronicle, November 13th, 1890. The Dog-Faced Girl, How Curiosities are Manufactured. A girl of 14, named Watine, who was missing from Roubaix, has been discovered by her parents at the Tourcoing Fair, where she was being exhibited in a booth as a woman with a dog's face. The showman had cleverly covered the girl's face with gum, to which the hair and ears of a dog were attached. By order of the police, these were washed off, and after the parents had rescued their daughter, the mayor ordered the booth to be shut up. The Hampshire Advertiser, Saturday, August 6, 1892.